Ready to go. Welcome, everyone. We will probably see a few people coming through the door, but we will welcome them or let them join at their own time. My name is Henry Chamberlain. I will shortly introduce and close the session today. I will say very little. It's a great privilege to partner with PVH Asia for this event. And Yanni, thank you for all the heavy lifting to make this happen. Yanni and Jack did a lot of heavy lifting. And the idea came from Yolanda. Yolanda, thank you. I just called her one day and said, how about we do this? And the next moment it was happening. So it's really great for us. We're all passionate about coaching. And at HCC, we want to transform the way coaching is done in Asia and beyond. And one of the things that we want to transform is making coaching accessible to more people. As one of my taxi drivers said last year, we all need a coach. So we would like to create that, and today one of the things that we want to make accessible is for young generation, making coaching available for the younger generation, not only for senior leaders. And that's what it's all about today. That's why I'll keep quiet. I will give the distinguished panel with diverse background and really good stories an opportunity to talk about their experience with being a coachee, and can the younger generation be trained? I know you're all younger generation. So the answer is that true? Can we train you as coaches, and do you have access to coaching, and is there a good return on investment? Those type of things we want to know more about today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nicholas Chan, the Master of Ceremony number 2. No, he's the moderator. So Nick is an IO psychologist, an entrepreneur, a millennial, and a coach. So you can choose which one you want to address him as. He is well qualified to moderate this panel, and I'm going to hand over to him to introduce the panel.
Thank you, Henry, for the kind introduction. And just want to say it's an honor for HCC Global and PVH Asia for inviting me here today to moderate on this topic, something I'm very passionate about as well. You know, being a recipient of coaching from great coaches like Henry to being a coach myself, I'm very excited to hear what the panel members have to say about coaching. I'm sure it's going to be very insightful for all of you. First, let's introduce Jonathan. He is the Senior Vice President and the Unified Commerce and Strategy at PVH Asia. You want to say a little bit about yourself?
I worked with Henry for a couple of years now, and it's been a great experience. I'll share more about sort of that journey later. I've been in the company 6 years and based in Hong Kong the whole time. So I think I know 2/3 of the people. I know everybody from the PVH team, and the other guests I don't think I know. I should say as well, I'm sure our compliance will remind me, everything I say today is just my own point of view. It doesn't necessarily represent PVH Asia, et cetera, so I'll just say that as well.
Great. And then next we have D.Who. He is a millennial coach and HR consultant from HCC Global.
So, hi everyone, I'm Steve. I worked with Henry for a few years. I'm a HR consultant and more importantly a coach. So my work is mostly around people, and my passion lies in bringing the potential to the workplace. So I have received coaching before, and I have benefited greatly from it, and that's why I want to bring it to other people as well. So it becomes kind of my job, and really love to hear from the crowd and other panels and share with you more experience on coaching.
Thank you, Steve. And lastly but not least, we have Kathy Yao. She is the Senior Engineer from C.How.
Hi everyone, I'm an engineer from C.How. I first received coaching from around 2 years ago under a program by C.How. And now I start to coach my team, and it's a great experience. And thanks to my coach, Sean and Henry, I think I benefit a lot from coaching and receiving coaching. Yeah.
So as you can see, we have quite a diverse group of individuals coming from different backgrounds, and definitely having their own personal experience with coaching. And today we're going to be talking about millennials, Gen Zs. Do they need coaching? Why should they have coaching? And how can coaching bring more success to their lives? We'll first probably go for the question. No? Okay. First question for the panel members. Coaching for developing millennials and Gen Z. Does it work? Great way to start the conversation.
Who do you want to start with?
Seems like you're.
I get to go first. Okay. So I was joking earlier with Henry that I would probably say something controversial today. So, I mean, I think from my point of view, I think two things I would say. One is, I think everybody, regardless of their generation, age, background, I mean, what they're interested in, what role they're in, can benefit from coaching. I mean, if you look at professional athletes, if you look at other industries, I mean, that's probably the one everybody's familiar with. Every athlete has a coach, etc. They could be the bench warmer, they could be the star athlete, they could be on a team that's winning championships, they could be on a team that's not making the playoffs, whatever. But everybody can work with and learn from a coach. And so I don't think it's so much necessarily about millennials per se. I know that's the topic for today, but we'll come back to that one. I think it's also just that everybody is often looking to do something differently, to learn something new, to improve on something, to try something different, etc. So I think everybody can benefit from that, regardless of where they're at. And I think at the same time, sort of everybody's looking for something different, right? So I think there's also a bit of a one size fits the individual, right? In the sense of one size fits all. So something that I might be interested in or need to work on might be different from the rest of the people on the panel or other folks. So I think there is a very individualized component. Certainly there's techniques, there's things that can be done across the board, but a lot of it is that the person, I would say, being coached has to also put in the work and do the work. It's not to say that the coach doesn't have to do a lot of stuff too, but you can have the best coach in the world, but if you're not sort of in a learning mindset, wanting to sort of make the most of it and wanting to put in the work as sort of a coachee, doesn't matter how good your coach is, they could be the best coach in the world and you're not going to sort of make progress on some of that. So I think those are the two. I think millennials, like any sort of generation, or any people individually want to do things differently, learn something new, try something new. So because they fit into that, they can be a part of it.
Yeah. I really like the part you talk about individuality. Everyone needs different things to achieve that goal per se. So to me, actually, to answer that question, we'll have to first clarify what coaching is. But it seems very difficult to summarize it because everyone has different style. But to me, it's about how to get to your insight. So coaching is a way, a scientifically proven method to help people get to their own insight. So it's not from anyone else, it's not from the coach, but from themselves. So the younger generation, they are different from the other because we can see a lot of them have a lot of energy. They have the drive to change the world. They want to make the world a better place. But sometimes they're just entangled by something maybe when you look back, it's not that big a deal, but then can really use some help to untangle. So I think that's how millennial or younger generation can benefit from coaching. They can unpack and really use the energy, use the drive to make the changes they want to achieve the thing they want to do.
Yeah, I want to add something personal. Being a coach here, I'm very touched by experience. First, because before I first met my coach, I don't know what to expect, to be frank. And after I met him, I think, wow, why didn't I think of that before myself? And I feel empowered in the sense of ownership, to own my own action. So I think when I look back 2 years ago, what I learned from my coach is that I should trust myself and I should go for it. Don't be entangled in some further sport. And now, however, as a coach, not so successful as a coach, I try to coach my teammate. And my younger teammate, they have some characteristics. They want to try something new, but they don't know what to do. And as an engineer, usually our style is to be mentor. I will tell them what to do. You should do that. You should do that. But as a coach, I can explain to them. You should explore the opportunity yourself. So I think this achieves much more than mentoring, being a coach to my younger teammate. Yeah.
I'd like to just build on that and also invite more of you guys to talk. Could you share with everyone, being a recipient of coaching, like what is that like, just building on what Kathy said? How did you feel the impact coaching had on your life and your career?
I think again, I'll share a personal bit in a second, but I think, just to build on the comments, it can be very personal, but I think everybody can find something that they're interested on getting better at, right? And it might be something that is new to them. It might be something that is a strength that they want to build into a super strength. It might be a weakness that they want to counterbalance. It might be a new type of role, a new team, a new geography, a new company. I mean, there's sort of an external piece, but I think there's also a lot of internal things. People may say, well, at this stage in my career, in my role, in my organization or whatnot, I want to do X. And I think that's a really critical part of getting clear on what do you want to get out of the coaching experience? What do you want, right? And then as you can get better at answering that question, then it becomes more clear what actions, initiatives, steps, etc. that you can sort of build into trying that out. If you're not able to answer that question, it becomes very amorphous, right? So I think that's where the person that's being coached really has to get in to be able to answer that question, because that's certainly a question that your coach is not going to answer for you. They're going to keep pushing you to answer that question yourself. And I think the answer can also change over time. I think especially as you go through a coaching journey, what you're focusing on in the first 1-2 sessions or 1 or 2 months or 6 months or however long you do it. In some cases, it might be in the first 10 minutes versus the next 10 minutes versus the next 10 minutes. That can also change over time, but I think being able to answer that question really helps to clarify.
Right. There's always that saying in biopsychologists, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but the light bulb needs to change. So in coaching, very much so, you as a coachee needs to understand or know what exactly you want to change. And the coach is there for you to empower you and drive you towards that. Thank you. Does anyone to share?
Yeah, I just want to catch on the point about the personal experience, how you really need to know what you want so that you can make it successful. So imagine it is any conversation you had before or read some from a book, a quote, whatever that make you feel like aha. But just imagine in coaching, this is you as a person, as an individual who aha yourself. So that's the power of it. I think it's in usual coaching assignment, we spend a lot of time just trying to figure out what the coachee really want to do. So I have an assignment that the coach comes to me and say, okay, Steve, I need a time management methodology because I can't follow the timeline and I need an external timeline, someone who hold my feet on fire. But then I just ask him, so what makes it so difficult for you to keep on to your own deadline? And it opens up a whole new different conversation about a different topic that relates to some inner game that like Jonathan just shared. And I think that's the power of coaching and that's the beauty of it. You don't really solve the problem according to what you have as evidence, but we look for things that are in the deepest sense that make sense to the coachee and owned by them.
Thank you, Steve. It's very eloquent.
I would like to share my personal experience again as a coaching, because at the beginning of my coaching session, I don't really know what I want to achieve. I just talk to my coach and say, oh, I want career development, I want something. But when he asked the person, I discovered that what I really want to achieve in the coaching session is not about career development. It's about how I want to grow as a person, how I want to develop my own characteristic as a person. So this completely changed the direction of the coaching session. And I have a few coaching sessions with my subordinate, and they have similar experience. And it's quite funny to have some subordinate come to you and say that I want a coaching session and I want to talk about this and that. But after you coach them, you discover that, oh, they have some hidden agenda. They don't really want that obvious conversation. And you can try to get them to explore, okay, what you really want to talk about. And I can try to make you figure out what you really want. This story is quite interesting. The coachee has to be aware and the coach has to think deep into the coachee. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it sounds very interesting. And I think that highlights as well that coaching is very dynamic. You can have one problem that you come to your coach with and think that's the issue. But over time, through conversation, through reflection, through that dialogue you have with your coach, you uncover things underneath that starts to emerge. And that's really the power of coaching, finding things that are unconscious almost. Which brings us to our next question about specifically coaching. Can millennials and Gen Zs coach? We have a millennial coach here. Why don't we have him talk first?
I'll be lying if I say that every millennial can coach. You do need some work experience, but it's about because if you don't have any work experience, and I think many millennial coach find it difficult to relate or build rapport with the coachee, especially if the person who sits in front of you is a CEO. You don't have any similar experience. You can't resonate with anything he said, but you still have to deliver the work. So how do we do? So most important thing in coaching that I think millennial or young people can add value to is really how we get to the insight. And we get to the insight by asking questions. But what kind of questions? So this is something I usually say when we are training coaches in HCC Global, is that you imagine you ask a question as if you are an innocent child. Bias-free, no stereotype, no any assumption at all. You just ask the questions that's seemingly there. It's nothing. If you have some cloud in your head already, if you agree with the coach already, how can you help them? Because you're already thinking the same. But younger generation, they have less mental fixation, a lot more flexible, I would say. So that makes it an advantage for younger generation to be a coach. To start with, at least.
I think what Steve has also pointed out very brilliantly is the idea of being genuinely curious. We all are human beings, and we all have our experiences, our biases, our stereotypes, whatever that may be, and we unconsciously sometimes maybe bring that to our conversations and dialogues with people. But with a coach, having that genuine curiosity, trying to be bias-free, being open to new ideas and what you're saying, that's really where powerful insight can come in. John?
I haven't been a coach, but I should take that back. I haven't been a formally trained psychology background, studying all the right metrics, but I do think there is somehow, just to build on both of your comments, sort of a universal piece that you can do. I think anybody can do in sort of any context. It doesn't even have to be a work context. It may be in your personal life or whatever, and you might not follow as clear of, let's say, a logic flow, or you may not go through certain metrics or things that maybe you would in a more formalized environment. But I think there is an element of that can be used in basically any relationship. It could be a peer relationship, a manager, either you're managing someone or being managed by someone. It could be a colleague. It could be somebody outside of work or whatnot. That I think listening and being an active listener, seeking to understand, asking genuine questions. Those are things you can do, anytime, right? And so I think that's also something that everybody can work on and build on. And then I think once you're comfortable with that, obviously, then you can get to the more kind of formal training pieces of it. But yeah, I think that's sort of the baseline. I guess I would say that's the prerequisite. I guess if you're not really interested or you don't really care, you can go do all the training, and you may not be that great of a coach, or you might not be that authentic of a coach, or whatever else. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a certificate that says you're a coach. You can practice coaching literally with your friends, your family, just being an active listener, being genuinely curious, and you can amazingly solve a lot of problems that you didn't realize. Kathy?
Yeah, I was saying before I start to coach my subordinate, I have my own question, whether I'm qualified enough to coach them. But then I discovered coaching is not mentoring. I'm not helping them to solve something technical. I'm just helping them to see the question and find the solution themselves. I like one saying from the training very much. It's about the coachee is the one looking at the boss, and the coach is the one looking at the coachee who is looking at the boss. So it's not about your technical knowledge on what the coachee wants to learn or what to achieve. It's about your learning on the coachee. So I think everyone can coach. In any case, you have an understanding on your coachee and you genuinely care for them. So I think everyone can coach.
Yeah. It's a mindset almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's not a psychologist where you need a master's degree.
That can help though.
It could help, but not necessary, right? So for the panel members, again, being a recipient of coaching, how do you know you're getting your money's worth of coaching? How do you measure the ROI?
I guess it depends on, should I give you the personal answer or the corporate answer? I guess I'll give you the corporate answer first, I'll give you the personal answer in a second. I do think, okay, we could do the whole sort of measurement piece to say, you could look at various different metrics, right? Attrition rates, retention rates, career development rates. You certainly want to find ways, and coaching I think is a great one, where you can continue to help people improve their performance over time, whatever role that they might be in, right? And so I think that's a key piece. And then I think on the personal side too, it's very easy. Are you excited to go to your coaching session? Are you interested? And excited doesn't necessarily mean that you might not be nervous or you might not have a topic you're unsure how to address or whatever. But it's also something that I think you have to basically say, wow, do I feel better after I go to? It's not sort of group therapy, but it's, do I feel like I'm making progress on the topic or the issue or whatever it is, or do I not, right? And I think you have to think about it that way, and some of that is very qualitative, right? It's hard sometimes to sort of put a dollar value on that or sort of bring it to a point, but I think there are a lot of ways that you can sort of look at that qualitatively. And then of course, there might be quantitative ways too. Whether you do some before and after, survey, study, whatever it might be. So I think there's a few different ways you can try to measure it, but I don't know, I'll let you comment on maybe the other ROI pieces as like from a coach perspective. How do you quantify if your coachee is making enough progress on the right topics? Probably both of you. You could probably talk to from both angles, so Kathy might have some interesting thoughts too.
Yeah, I just want to add on the part about the coach's own experience. So
Yeah.
from a coach perspective, the most rewarding moment I would say is that when you receive a message saying that, Steve, I have something I would really like to talk to you, can we have a quick session? So that I know he found the conversation we have very useful, and that coachee believes that coaching is really helping them to solve certain kind of problem. But in the corporate sense, of course, if we're talking about hard number, it will be, I think that's the same issue of any talent development practitioner will understand, is that it's very difficult to quantify. But in terms of personal development, like for example, say John, for example, has been working with Steve for leadership for 3 months. So we can ask the other people around John, so okay, John has been working for 3 months. How far has it gone? Or what's the progress? So rating forms or using some, now we have very fancy digital development platform that can allow you to send survey to others people and keep track on the progress. I think that's something that we can show and really demonstrate how coaching is helping a person to transform.
Well, I don't have any hard number to support my saying. What I want to say as a coach myself is that I feel, how I mentioned the coaching session effectiveness is that how I feel the ownership of my own action. If something tells me to do something, like the normal mentoring, okay, you say this, I can do this. But after a coaching session, I feel much more motivated to own my own action. And as a coach to my teammates, I feel that they are much more eager to achieve what they want to achieve in the coaching session. Like they actively take ownership of their solution. They actively raise some extra projects. They are not being rewarded by the extra project, but they raise it anyway. So I think it's how I evaluate the effectiveness of coaching session is that how eager the coachee is willing to step to their action and how eager they are willing to discover what their solution themselves. Yeah.
So what our panel members have also greatly put, there are many different ways to calculate ROI. The hard numbers, attrition, career pathing, promotions, stuff like that, those are hard numbers that we can do. Softer numbers, surveys, asking our colleagues, has there been behavioral change? Has there been a change in the person in general? But the most important, not the most important, but I say something that is often neglected is just asking the coachee themselves, are you enjoying your coaching? Do you find it meaningful? As John said, are you eager to even go to your coaching session? That can be a powerful way to measure it as well. And just subjectively, in your heart, if you feel like it's helping you and you feel comfortable and you feel safe, I think that's, we could all use that, especially during times of uncertainty. So, in our next question that we have, since coaching is so great, how do you make it more accessible to people in your organization? maybe organizations and others, or in your own personal life? Please feel free to share.
Well, thank you. In CLP, we have a very great program called Career Navigator, in which the young talents can receive coaching, and they will be coached, and they will receive training on coaching. So after we receive the training, we can coach each other, and we can practice on our teammates. So I think it's how CLP make coaching accessible. By making people joining this kind of program, you will receive training, and you can take it to your workplace, and then everyone can have some sense of it.
So I can also share about how I will add on to that program a little bit, but let's just share what we have in our team, because our team member is also here. So in HCC, we teach everyone coaching. So everyone get out of the door is a coach. And it is because there's some times that we've discovered our intern, the youngest intern, sometimes deliver the best solution. And they're extremely smart, highly motivated. And if I can get them to think and act like in a professional manner, and they can do it on their own, then I don't need to work. No, it's really about they can create their own community of starting to coach each other to work more effectively together. And adding on to the program that Kevin just shared is more about how do we, because coaching obviously is something not so cheap that everyone is able to afford, but to make it accessible, there are elements that we can distribute to different functions. So for example, if there are a few participants who want to develop their leadership skill, then send them to the same leadership training. Then they don't need an individual coaching assignment to work on them on their own. They also can access their buddy on coaching, so they can meet up frequently, talk about what they experience in their coaching or in their life. They get some coaching from each other, and at the same time develop their coaching skills. So building the coaching community, or even a coaching culture, that will make coaching accessible in our organization.
Yeah, I think what both of you are sort of identifying to some degree is there's a little bit of a spectrum, and on the one side you have maybe like super formal, very clearly set up. I mean, you're working with a coach in X number of dedicated sessions in this timeline, maybe focusing on these couple of topics that you've sort of jointly identified, which is quite a formal and probably among the least accessible, let's say, right? Because there's a level of formality, and therefore, you have a structure, and it's very kind of put together. And then on the other side, you have what I would say is like a very kind of informal, unscheduled, day to day or hour to hour or whatnot. And so I think you have a lot of different places to play on that spectrum. And it's not to say that you have to also be always at the same point on the spectrum, right? I mean, you may start on one side and it's very informal, and it could be peer-to-peer, it could be somebody that you work with or you learn from or whatever, and then over time you might be on a different point on the spectrum. You say, oh, it'd be great to work with a dedicated coach, and I want to work on these 2 or 3 topics together for 3 months, I'm going to have 5 sessions or whatever. And then maybe you might go back to the other direction. You say, well, now I'm working with a network of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 folks in the organization that I work with, or in the community or whatever. So I think you can navigate a bit across that, but I think there is I guess different points that you can sort of work either as a coachee or as a coach across that. And it may be different points in your career, different points in your personal development, different interest levels or topics or things that you want to explore, and then it's kind of finding the right kind of match between that, right? What's available that I can access? What am I interested in spending time, energy, and mind share on, and how to find kind of that combination.
Great. So I think everyone here, when probably they first heard of coaching, they think it's a very formal setting. It's something that has to be set up maybe by HR, it's reserved, and there's a time schedule, there's a dedicated meetup. But I think, especially for me, what I found very important in my realization is that, again, coaching is a mindset. It can happen anytime. It can happen with your peers, as Jonathan said. It can happen with your colleagues, it can happen with your friends, your family. Suddenly, your friend could bring up a topic, maybe a conflict at work or some issues at home, and boom, that's where you can do coaching. That's where you can start adopting that coaching mindset and helping your friend or your colleague work through those issues. Right? But keeping on that topic, any advice for anybody here if they want to try and practice coaching a little bit at home? Like what are some of the tips that a coach would do, or some skill sets maybe you can share?
Okay, yeah, okay. I will share some experience. When I first tried to practice coaching with my teammates, I made a mistake. I didn't make it open that, oh, I'm going to coach you. I didn't say that. So my teammate is quite confused what you are trying to do. What are you trying to have a discussion on me, or are you trying to appraise me or something? Is there a promotion interview or something? So no, don't make this mistake like me. So you have to get out in the open with your coach that you are trying to coach them, and you have to build some trust with them, because it's sometimes in my experience when you are the supervisor, the coachee may not feel comfortable to share everything with you, and this coaching session may not be that effective. So I think you have to find someone you trust and make the coachee and also trust you to have a very effective coaching session. So that's my own sharing on how to make coaching more effective. Yeah.
So trust and open communication. Right? Steve?
Yes, I think I agree on what Kevin is sharing to us. We observe a lot of time when we just teach someone coaching, they become very eager to coach. Every conversation turns into a coaching, basically. If you're a hammer, everything is nailed. That's just how it is. And having the power to ask insightful questions to help you to solve problems is very tempting, but sometimes coaching is not the solution. Then we need to be very clear on what we are doing. Like Kevin said, state very clearly, this is I would like to explore coaching with you. Are you willing to take it? And really to make sure this is in your line. So don't do something that you're not comfortable handling. So there are certain topics that a coach cannot help. So for example, maybe something that need counseling help, then you need to know where the boundary is. And another tip is don't coach your spouse. They get in. So that's probably the most important to me.
All right. So know your limitations. Don't coach your spouse or your partner. Yeah. John?
No, I would just. I think a lot of the topics I would agree with. I think the relationship piece is a big one. I mean, I'm sure it's possible that you can have a coaching relationship and you don't have a relationship with a person, or maybe it's something and it's one-off and whatnot. And I do think that that's possible, but I would say I think it can be a lot more effective if it's a relationship that's built up over time. And then it also does two things. One, it allows, I think, more let's say, exchange over time, and then being able to relate back maybe to previous topics, previous discussions, etc. Obviously, in some circumstances, you may not be able to do that, right? I mean, if you say, well, I really want to work on this one topic, and what's available to me is a 30-minute session with a coach, I think that can still be super valuable. But I think where I see a huge benefit is that compounding interest over time, right? So you're able to keep, building up on that. So I think that's a big one. And I think, you have to have a certain level of, I don't know what the right word is, trust, rapport, chemistry. I mean, if it's somebody that you don't really feel comfortable with, either as a coachee or as a coach, then it's unlikely that you'll be able to get as much out of it as if you do have, I would say, some of that. And it's not that has to be on the first session or the first time, but if you are able to kind of build that relationship over time, it becomes, I think, a little bit more challenging to maximize the full sort of opportunity.
Thank you, John. Thank you. We're going to ask the last question before we reach the Q&A session. So, our panel members, who should get a coach? And who can coach?
I think those who are ready to make some changes or do something, actually. And by ready, I really mean who is willing to step out of comfort zone, who is willing to take ownership of their life and their career, who is willing to challenge themselves should get a coach. It will be so much easier on the path to have someone who can clear your cloud for you, who can ask you questions, and when you feel confused and sometimes you find it very difficult to persist on what you believe is right, getting a coach with you is very helpful. At least to myself, I think it's very useful. And for those who want to coach, who wants to try coaching and share their happiness, the joy of enabling others, unleashing other potential, I would say just one tip is to start notice every conversation you have. How many times are you trying to put attention to yourself but not really listening to the person? Once you notice that and you're really listening to the other people, you're already doing half of coaching. So then you can maybe get certification or study psychology. That doesn't matter. It's the mindset. Like I really like how Nick phrased it. It's the mindset that matters. Growth mindset.
Well, I think for coaching, this is the people who are willing to make a change, who is willing to step out of their comfort zone, like Steve said. And for a coach, who can be a coach, I think in organization-wise, everyone could have a peer or could have subordinate can be a coach, because you don't actually need to coach your subordinate, you can coach your peer. I try on my peer here, it's quite successful, I think. so I think organization-wise, everyone can be a coach. And as a friend or family, I think you can be a coach in every occasion, because when you care for someone, you can be a coach to them, I think. Yeah. So I think everyone can be a coach in this kind of sense. But if you're talking about formal qualification, I think you have to be willing to dedicate your time into the training.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think both of you said it very well from both perspectives. I think, I do think, if we say coaching is a mindset, I would say being a coachee is also a mindset, in the sense that if you're not in that kind of learning mode, personal development mode, forget about it. If you wanna, go talk to somebody, I would say a coach, okay, I go back to my beginning topic, maybe I'll say something controversial, but I would say a coach is not a therapist, right? I think everybody should have a therapist, but not everybody should have a coach, in the sense that if you're not willing to put in the time to work on things, you still might need a therapist, but maybe it's not a good opportunity to have a coach, because if you're not willing to put in, it's like if you're playing a sport, if you don't want to go to basketball practice, you're not going to get any better at playing basketball. So if you're working with a coach and you're not willing to put in the time, before, during, and after the session, and say, well, maybe I don't fully agree with this, maybe this didn't work as I thought it did, or whatever, then you're wasting your time, right? So I think that's where I would maybe make a bit of a distinction to say, if you're not willing to be kind of in that mindset as a coachee, you're not going to make progress, right? It's going to be self-defeating, because you won't see the progress. Then you'll be even less inclined to be excited about it. You'll be less in a growth mindset, and then it sort of could fall apart. On the other hand, you have the opposite happen, where if you're interested in it, you're spending the time, you're thinking about it, you get a bit of the virtuous cycle of the flywheel going, and then you're able to kind of build into that. So yeah, I think that's a big one. And I think the coaching piece is also, I would say, somehow specific, because you do have to, have something that you're working on, right? I think that's where, and again, it can change over the time. It can be different topics for different people, but I think that's really where, if you say, well, what do I want to work on? Nothing. It's kind of like, okay, you're not. It's like, again, playing basketball. You say, well, what do you want to get better at? Well, nothing. It's like, okay, what are you going to practice? Oh, I don't know. So I think that's where you really have to do the introspection, and you have to really build into that.
So a lot of things that all of you said, improvement, there's an issue, and I think underlying all that is just, if there is change in your life, or you're trying to change something about yourself, or you're going through change, I think that's where coaching can make the most impact, because it can be hard for some of us to change. For some of us it's easy, some of us it's a lot harder. And I think over the past couple of years it's shown us that, that now more than ever, coaching can really help us get through the hurdles in life that we see on a day-to-day basis. Do you have anything final to add before we reach the Q&A session?
Ready.
Ready? All right. Well, thank you so much for answering the core questions. We'll now open it to the floor and hear any questions that you all might have.
Thank you. thank you to the panel for sharing. It's very inspiring. I actually have a question for Kathy. And you mentioned that in your organizations, you guys train the people in coaching, and then you get them to practice. You build this great community. I've been trying to do the same thing, but it just hasn't. The passion kind of just dropped after 3 months. How do you continue to engage people and keep that community alive?
I think it's more about the community or the culture, because our program is a 1-year program, and we do get some follow-up session after that 1 year. So it's from time to time we have some reminder from the HR department that, okay, you learned something from this, how are you doing with that now? And then, as I mentioned before, in the program we have quite a few participants, and we have a community there. We learn coaching, and we coach each other. We try to over lunch or over tea time something. So I think it's keeping them the coaching culture in the company. Because when you get that, everyone do that naturally, and you don't need to do something extra to keep that momentum going. Yeah.
Thanks.
Since PVH is hosting this event, I'm assuming there is a coaching culture, or at least we're building up to one. Are there some tips if that's the main tip in getting the community going?
Yolanda, you want to answer that one? You want me to go first? Look, I think we talked a little bit about some of the elements of the formal and informal. I mean, I think one thing that I think there's some prerequisites to that, right? So I think, before you can have like a coaching community or everybody being a coach, I think you have to really make sure that you're doing some of the basics super well. So, giving feedback, having open dialogues, understanding, aspirations of individuals, whether you're team members, your peers, your colleagues, understanding and going through that. So I think that's something that I think we really put a lot of emphasis on. It's part of our core values. If you look at individuality, partnership, I think those are ones where working together to understand people as individuals, and then also partnership as a team and as a group. So I think those are two that I would say there is a lot of focus on. I think where we're really trying to accelerate a bit, and I'll let Yolanda talk to this, you probably can say it more eloquently than I can, is then to say, that's a great baseline, but then how do you build up on top of that, right? So what does that look like? Is that everybody has access to a coach or coaching? Is that a combination of other leadership development programs? Is that something that's done internally or partnering with organizations like HCC? That's where I think from an organizational perspective, you may have kind of an institutional point of view to say, what does that look like as part of an associate experience? Where are there potential gaps or felt needs, whether in associate feedback or exit interviews or new hire first impressions or whatever it might be. So I think what I would say is, we've really focused over the past couple of years and before that on building that baseline, and I think we're putting together the plan around what's next. Well, how does that build out further over time? But I don't know. I'll let Yolanda add some comments, I think, to that one.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to PVH. My name is Yolanda. I head the talent organization for Asia, so I'm going to try and add some additional context to that. So to the question whether we've got today a coaching culture, I'd go, yes, no, it's a work in progress. That's not to say that in the last 5-6 years, even before I joined this organization, that there have been attempts to try and grow this and to instill that, but there's definitely still ways to go. And on a daily basis, my team, myself, we're still figuring out, not even just our team here in Asia, but even globally, how do we bring it to more people? How do we actually democratize? That was one of the words that we used, coaching, right? So it's a work in progress. It's definitely, and I'd be thrilled to hear any tips from any of our other partners in the industry to be able to share that, because I think that's something that we're also trying to get after. Beyond some of the things that Jonathan's talked about. There's some basic skills. I'll take this just as a quick moment. There's always that question in terms of, can your manager be your coach, right? Or is your manager using coaching behaviors to help unleash your potential, which is a different conversation unto itself. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. I don't know if that answers your question.
When I was looking at the topic, Millennials and Gen Z, coaching, I thought I wanted to hear something about how is coaching Millennials different from coaching Gen X, myself, the older generation. With so many Millennials here, I'd be interested to hear.
I'll try this one first. I have coaching for both younger generation and the normal generation. So the difference is usually, I would say, about where to start actually. So from the young generation, they come in the room or they ask for your help for something that they want to do instead of what they are trying to avoid. So if there is a problem that happened in our organization, your corporate will probably send you to a coach, okay, help me fix it. But that's not really healthy practice in a lot of sense, because coaching, like what you said, is a growth mindset. It's not just about fixing a problem. So that's when we approach more senior coachee, they usually comes with a set different expectation. And that makes the coach a little bit more difficult because you have to set the scene, you have to build a rapport. I'm not here to change who you are, but I'm trying to help you to be the best version of yourself. For younger generation, like I think I've shared earlier that they have a less fixed mindset. They are more agile and flexible in terms of what they want to become, because they're still in the early stage of their role. They still have a lot of experience that they can obtain, unlike all other things. That it opens up a lot of options. You can have more radical solution that comes up in the session that you think, oh, maybe that's very difficult to do. Are you sure? And they say yes, and they actually did it. So I think from a coach perspective, both coaching assignments are rewarding, but when you see the progress of a younger generation and you see the growth along the journey, that's something that nothing can replace.
Well, I will try to share my experience as a supervisor who tried to use coaching behavior. When I try to coach younger generation, millennials, they are very open, they are very flexible, they are willing to trust you, they are willing to build a very trusting relationship with you. When I try to coach my teammate who is a lot more senior, they tend to go to the mindset that, okay, you're my supervisor, I will do whatever you told me to do. Don't try to maybe explore myself. I don't have such time for that. Just tell me what to do. So it's quite hard to build a trust relationship in terms of coaching. I think a trusting coaching relationship with a senior teammate. I think that's just my personal experience as a supervisor who try to use coaching. Yeah.
I haven't had much experience coaching more mature people, so it might not be different, but what I noticed is something quite interesting. Probably the other side of the coin is with younger generation, oftentimes when you try to tap into, I guess, values and mindsets, it's oftentimes quite challenging. Most of them haven't really even thought about that yet, so it's quite hard to kind of ground to that. While people with life experience, that is something that I find is easier to explore and then to anchor to.
Are there any other coaches want to comment? There's some coaches in the audience.
No, I just want to acknowledge what you shared and just to thank you for that view, because it also helps coaches to reflect what does it take to coach the younger generation. So it does imply that we also need to grow and to be more agile and more open-minded and to be more flexible, and perhaps more bite-sized coaching is more, more suitable for the younger ones. So thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. Last question going. Nothing on your mind?
This is your chance.
Any of the honorable panel members, what's it like to be a coach or a coachee? You know all of the answers. Right. Going. Good. By the powers vested in me, I will then declare the session over. Thank you very much. I'm taking away a lot. Anybody can coach if you do some fundamental things, if I heard correctly. If you listen properly, you're already halfway coaching. Steve, is that right? You can coach older and younger people. Kathy? Jonathan? You didn't say anything controversial.
I guess not. Next time.
Return on investment value and making it part of the bigger journey if you're a leader to make sure that the skills are there. There are organizations who's already coaching their millennials and their Gen Z. So it reminds me of the old saying that says something like, those who say it cannot be done must get out of the way of those who are already doing it. So I know some of our audience members who didn't ask questions today are also practicing coaching their organizations for younger generation. And I think the most heartwarming or the most encouraging thing is that we can start coaching today. You don't have to wait for a big coaching program. You don't have to wait to be trained as a coach, although the people on the stage who are trained coaches would probably tell you it's worth doing that. But you don't need to train the whole world in formal training. If we listen a little bit better, if we practice a little bit better, a little bit of training goes a long way. And we can make a difference. And I think, if you think back of your best friend, that person that you love to speak to, the person that everybody goes to ask for advice, if you really think about why people go and ask that person for advice, it's often because they don't give advice. It's because they're just really good at listening to you and not judging you and making you feel like you're okay. So if you start with that as a coaching mindset, you don't need any of those skills. You can listen non-judgmentally. If you can make people feel okay, if you can make them feel heard, that's a great start. And I hope that at least each of you will at least take one little bite-sized chunk away from here. Go and coach, go and be a coach, go and search for a coaching program that would suit you. Go and ask your manager for some coaching training. Go and ask your HR for coaching. And I hope that we will start the movement. We've already started the movement, but it will help us to maintain the momentum. Thank you very much. Thank you very much again for being there. And thank you for each of the panel members. Thank you for Nick moderating, and thank you for the inputs. Great.